Um, so we're a Network 75 group, and the aim of this presentation was to look at the purchasing cycle and how this impacted upon the Principality Stadium. So we used two examples. We used security, and then we used match day programs throughout to help us explain it. In this introduction, I've just included some key information about the Principality Stadium. So when it opened, it's the fourth biggest stadium in the UK, which can hold 74,000 seats. I thought it was quite interesting that it had 7 hospitality lounges, 34 public bars, and 16 food outlets, because I didn't actually know that. So that's something interesting. Obviously, the Principality Stadium is a big it has a big economic impact for Cardiff, so you can see that it brings in 135 million of output. And then obviously we're in the global pandemic, so that's going to affect the economy of Cardiff as well. So this is something we'll want to consider when choosing our security companies. And it's also been unveiled that Cardiff is going to be carbon neutral by 2050, so this is another factor we'll have to include in terms of transport and carbon emissions when we're looking at the security supply chain. Here I just had a look at what security firms were in and around Cardiff in a 3.5 mile radius. So I found 16 security companies, so there was actually quite a few. And then I've also just had a look and seen what other security measures were in place in the Principality Stadium, just to give us a broader view, so you can see the smoke detectors and all that. And then I've just mentioned more about the carbon neutrality and coronavirus. So this is going to mean that we're going to want to look for larger, perhaps more stable companies that are going to be more reliable when we are out of the pandemic. And then on this slide, I was just comparing other large sporting venues in Cardiff, just to help give us a comparison to see if there's any correlation between what sort of strategies the companies were using, if it was like mixed strategy. You can see that the Principality and Cardiff both use South Wales Police and local partnerships. So maybe this is something we could consider when it comes to our make or buy when we look throughout the purchasing cycle.
So I've looked at the needs and the specifications. So in the Principality Stadium, there's many security checks that visitors will see and many they won't notice. For example, every event is threat assessed by the South Wales Police, and even down to road closures. So the safety and the security is the top priority. And the Principality Stadium holds 73,931 people seated. So this does state that it requires a lot of security to ensure everyone is staying safe. So the Principality Stadium would require a manned guarding licence, which is a frontline licence. So a manned guarding licence is for regulated entertainment. And a frontline licence, you must have a frontline licence if you personally perform a licence for a front activity. So legislation that applies to the safety of a sports ground is from the Safety Authority website, which states any sport ground with accommodation of more than 5,000 spectators require a safety certificate. Can you go on to the next one, please?
Yep.
So this is the specification. So specification is defined as a statement of the attributes of a product or service, a statement of requirements, a statement of needs to be satisfied by the procurement of external resources. So there's two types of specification, which is conformance and performance. So performance specification is that a clear indication of the purpose, function, application and performance expected of the supplied material or service is communicated, and the supplier is allowed or encouraged to provide. A conformance specification lays down clear and ambiguous requirements that must be met. The specification is about the product, not application. So Lyson and Farrington have provided how to write a specification. So two examples is that every requirement increases the price, and the shorter the specification, the less time it takes to prepare it. Can you move on, please? So ISO 14000 is an international standard for environmental management. So for Cardiff to try and be able to meet carbon neutral by 2050, the Principality Stadium could look for different security companies that have a qualification already, or by hiring local employees such as security guards, as they will be less need to travel to work. So there are many definitions of quality, one being ISO 9000, which was updated in September 2005. So this is defined as all the characteristics, including performance or an item, product or service, that bears on its ability to satisfy stated or implied needs. So the Principality Stadium require quality within the security requirements, that is the safety of people attending the event. Next slide now.
My responsibility was to do the presentation was to do the make or buy. Firstly, a make or buy decision is an act choosing between manufacturing a project in-house or purchasing it from an external supplier. Make or buy analysis is conducted at a strategy and a operational level. The strategy level included an analysis of the future, as well as the current environment issues like the government regulation, competing firms, and market trends. All of a strategy impact on the make or buy decision. Company use quantitative analysts to determine whether making or buying is the most cost-efficient method. Research found by separate texts showed us considerations that favour making a part in-house. Is cost considerations, better quality control, unreliable suppliers, desire to maintain a stable workforce, quantity too small to interest a supplier, control of lead time, transportation and warehouse costing, political, social or environmental reasons as well. Next slide, please. Factors that may influence firms to buy a part externally include lack of expertise, suppliers reach and specialized know how to exceed that of the buyer, cost considerations, small volume requirements, indirect managerial control considerations, brand preference, items not essential to the firm's strategies. With regards to make or buy with group, it is a service, so you can't physically make it. At match days, the stadium would have employed stewards, which is cemented by SIS group that come from supply market. This is purchasing being made from the Principality Stadium for protection for the supporters and the event occurring to ensure that nothing serious happens. As already stated, with make or buy, security is a service. You can't physically make it as, for example, an alarm system when entering your home is already made. It just needs the correct person to set it up for your own personal use. The stadium has obviously purchased CCTV cams around the whole stadium to ensure it's protected on match days events. Not on match days and events, sorry, if something occurs when there's no one around to help out. This is for the stadium's own personal use, so they can see what the problem is and see how they can tackle it. Principality work very close with South Wales Police, counter-terrorism unit and local partners. They work with these security partners on match day events to ensure everyone entered Principality has been searched and are clear and are safe and clear to enter the stadium for everyone's own benefit. The Welsh Rugby Union has a core team at the Lodge that looks after the WRU facilities 24/7, ensuring it is all secured and safe. This is important to do so that when they eventually have to use these facilities, they are needed when used upon. Thank you.
This is the identification of sources. The sourcing decisions are single sourcing, dual sourcing, and multiple sourcing. The Principality have decided to use multiple supply sources for their security, including South Wales Police, the Wales Extremism and Counter-Terrorism Unit, and local partners. This decision is made to intensify the safety of the customers. This decision would need to be managed carefully. Next slide, please. The Principality Stadium need to know their main suppliers well. They need to visit them, talk to people who make decisions about them, keep in touch with business plans and what is going on inside key supply organisations. For example, if there is a big event taking place, they will need to consider using the police for threat assessments around the stadium prior to the event. They also need to be in contact with Cardiff Council so they can plan road closures. The location of sources of supply is one of the major responsibilities when you are looking to outsource. There will be a lot of suppliers who will want to compete to meet the buyer's needs so that they will choose them. However, it's not that easy. The buyer will be more concerned about the location of the suppliers, as this is a challenging factor. This can be linked to economy, carbon or speed. The Principality Stadium and South Wales Police work together as they are within and around Cardiff, so if there were any problems at the stadium, they will be easily accessible and can get there faster. Next slide, please. Selecting security for the stadium is important for considering the price and quality. As the business uses multiple sourcing, it creates competition amongst other suppliers. This will lead to better quality service, lowering the costs and quicker delivery. The stadium use South Wales Police as they are reliable and have a good reputation, as they are more likely to deliver their service on time with a high quality. Next slide.
Tor, this is your slide.
Sorry, I was on mute. I've been rambling on and I was on mute, sorry. After selecting multiple sources for a tender, the stadium will have to narrow down their selection pool. The way they can do this is by sending out PPQs to all the potential suppliers. Doing a PPQ, some of them may withdraw from the tender anyways, as they may not meet the requirements or may not agree with the PQQ. It is also important that they select a reliable supplier, as at the end of the day, they're responsible for public safety. Next slide, please. Managing the supply contract. Once a supplier or suppliers have been accepted on the tender, they will have to manage their suppliers according to. They'll have to manage their suppliers. According to Lyons and Farrington, they state a more modern way to manage suppliers is to have a more friendly approach and not a patriarchal style approach, which is deemed to be outdated. P. Bailey states that the public sector needs a more hands-on approach. A good way to do this is the red, amber, green system. Doing this, Principality Stadium can closely monitor which suppliers are maintaining above performance or if they need to be looked at and improved. Next slide.
This slide is the decommissioning and disposal. Decommissioning is basically a general term for the formal process to remove something from active status, whereas disposal is the action or process of getting rid of something. It can be used under the following schemes: engineering, coercion, intelligent systems, remote sensoring and robotics, risk assessment and safety, social policy and environmental assessment. In this instance, for the Principality Stadium, when purchasing laptops, they must be wiped prior to being recycled. This such scheme was held in Caerphilly earlier this year, where local residents were able to donate any unwanted IT equipment as part of IT estimony. It is likely that multiple sources were used for this service, which ultimately constructively intensifies competition, but as a result also needs more careful managing. Next slide, please. This is the payment and reviewing the cycle slide. There are generally 7 key steps within this cycle. The first and arguably most important step is to understand and define the business opportunity or business need. The next one being to conduct market opportunity analysis research to help identify potential suppliers and the degree of competition that you will be dealing with. Once these have been established, it is key to identify and select sources. There are a number of ways in which you can find suppliers through database, trade directory, sell to Wales and expeditions alike. The location of the supplier is also key. This is because if a supplier is located near to your company, the transport and delivery costs will be lower. It's also worth considering economy and carbon when selecting the source. The next bit of information I got was from Procurement Principles and Management, a book by David Jones, where he explains that the purchasing order cycle covers the end-to-end ordering process from purchase order creation right through to approval, receipt, delivery, and in transfer of goods and services in acceptable proportions that have previously been arranged upon all parties. That's everything.
So this is our bibliography and references page. If you have any questions, then please ask us. Otherwise, thank you for listening.